Hello everybody, my name is Miriam Thiel-Alberts and you're watching or listening a little bonus video, a bonus podcast with Anna Twinney. And this is how we can see you better. And hello Anna, welcome.
Yeah.
We did a lovely interview recently for the Animal Wisdom Stories podcast and video available. And because we were talking for so long and there were so many things to discuss and chat about, and you shared so many insight tips, that we decided to do an extra little video with the animal wisdom messages. And, you know, for those of you that don't know Anna, I don't think there are many people that don't know what you're doing. Anna Twinney is an animal communicator, energy healer, horse whisperer, coach, mentor, writer,
producer of DVDs. There you go.
Thank you. So I did miss one. And so last time we didn't have the chance to talk about the animal wisdom messages, and you were kind enough to bring two of your dogs, so to say, to this, and you sent me two pictures, and I connected with both of them, and now we're going to talk about the lovely messages that they wanted to share. Are you okay? Shall I? So I am going to start. I have to do it like this, so I can't really. With the lovely dog called Merlin. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to say the message or read the message, and then we'll talk about the dog and the message a little bit. So I asked Merlin what he wanted to share with us today. And this is what Merlin said. Today I would like to share about unconditional love and the need to experience it. Humans attach a lot of importance on certain types of love, but often very little importance on the kind that is divine and eternal. The love for your animals is eternal. It just is. It never leaves you. It never changes. That love is unconditional and opens your heart, your barriers, and your soul in order for us to be able to connect in that deep, warm, and cozy place. Even though I have changed, my love has not. Like electricity, love is a flowing currency that changes everything. From the day you are loved unconditionally, you are a different person. Everything is possible with that love in your heart, and that is what I did in your life. I always made sure you were loved unconditionally, because that love gave you wings to soar up to the sky without any limitation. That was from Merlin.
Very beautiful, Miriam. Very beautiful. So I will grab this picture. Actually, I can grab this picture back here. For those that don't see the picture, I'll make sure there's no glare. But that was him, puppy, which is really sweet. And this was him later on, so people can see that too. And Merlin came into my life while I was in California at Flagger's Farms at Monty Roberts' place. And it was 2001 that he came into my life. And he was the first individual that I committed to, having come from the UK or Germany, whichever way you wish to look at it, and settled in. And he was only a few weeks old. I met him up in Paso Robles. It was about 2 hours north in California, and he was a litter of a number of pups. He's a Catahoula cross Australian Shepherd and a bundle of joy. And I remember identifying him because of the teardrop in his little eye. And I said, he's the one I would love to have, in both brown eyes. And so he came into my life, was exactly that. He represented many things. And one is absolutely unconditional love both ways, from me to him and him to me. And so with it, he had this incredible way of needing to be with me, unlike any other dog. And people will say, I can relate to that. But envision this. I put him in a little dog run where I used to live, and Merlin would, he's only 8 weeks old, and he'd climb up. It was a mare motel, so it was about a good 6 feet high, and he'd climb up and down, and he'd run to the office, and he'd be so proud, and he wasn't allowed to be there. So I had to take him back, and then I put a roof on it, and he climbed up and he knocked the roof, and he came out, and then I put logs on it, and he'd climb up, and he'd manage to push through the logs, and he'd come out, and I had to zip lock that roof down. It was the beginning of this incredible relationship where Merlin felt no matter where I was or what I was doing, he'd have to find me. And I would go on the road, and it's kind of a sad but also an incredible story. And he'd stay with a friend of mine up the road in Solvan, and Merlin would run home miles. And I got a phone call one day from the animal control, and they said, we tried to catch your dog, but we couldn't. And I taught him to dodge when he was little. He'd dodge, and he dodged away from the animal control. But it was all about, I've got to find Anna. I've got to be with Anna. And never stopped that. So the day he died, he was 16, and it was March. And March, I go on the road every year. And it was March, and Merlin left this house at 16 looking for me. He'd do it one time each year at the end of his life. And luckily a neighbor saw him, because he wouldn't have made it. He would have gotten lost and not found his way home on this occasion, but he found his way home. So the love was extraordinary that we had for one another. He could do no wrong, really, in my eyes. Even if you have your ups and downs, he could do no wrong. And I do believe, for those that are learning about new lives or multiple lives, I do believe that he and I had many together. And that's not necessarily something tangible for people, because it's just not tangible, but it's certainly something to realize that the affection, the dialogue, the relationship wasn't just a human dog relationship. There was way more to it, of a companion, a soulmate, a shoulder to cry on. And no matter what happened to him, and many things did, he had 9 lives, so to speak. He had multiple lives. He could have died so many times. I do everything in my power to help him stay and come back. I do anything for this boy. And likewise, he'd do anything for me. And I haven't met very few people like Merlin who would throw his life on the line for me, which he had done as well. He's done that. And likewise, I would do the same. So absolutely, that love is unparalleled, what we shared then. Very different when they move over. Sorry for this.
It's okay.
Very different when they cross over. And the time of transition means a lot to me, because I think we're transitioning from physical to spiritual and vice versa, right? But the person that gets left behind, for me, that transition is learning how to handle this. Even if I can talk to animals on the other side, it doesn't actually give me a ton of relief anymore. It used to, but now it's that thing of, I want you by my feet. I want to touch you. I want to hear you. I want to see you. And so this time and transition means I'm getting more distance between what happened. I'm allowing time to heal. And the transition, like I say, is for both parties. Yes, it doesn't alter, and yes, we'll be back together again. But at the same time, it's heart-wrenching to lose somebody of that nature and caliber.
Yeah, I completely agree. I had a soul cat. That was my first soul animal. I mean, that animal that sort of had that really strong bond. And I completely agree. I could connect to that cat, but I wanted to actually feel that cat, the warmth of that cat. When he was when he was lying behind my back, or he was lying on my side, and it's okay, and it's okay to have those feelings and to miss that animal, and it's also okay to connect with them. And when I was connecting to Merlin, I could feel his energy. His energy is just so strong. He was radiating, you know. I felt like the sun, you know, that this is what I felt like, you know, he was radiating like a sun. And yeah, still so full of joy and love, and very clear on, you know, on what he wanted and what he was here for, you know, in the learning and with you. And when, you know, the message for all of us, you know, I believe the message was especially for you, but it's for everybody that listens. So yeah, very special dog, I have to say.
Right. Yes, he's helped many, he's educated many, he continues to educate, and he's quite picky. In this lifetime, when he was here and I was teaching animal communication, and he was 16 and a half when Merlin left, and up until then he taught animal communication and through many classes and so on. And I kid you not, Miriam, the majority of classes, so I don't know if that equates to hundreds or not, and it doesn't matter, but at least hundreds of people, Merlin would not talk to them all. So if there were 10, 15 in the class, he'd choose one. He would tell half the class he was dead. He'd tell the other half he was a rabbit. And he'd select one or two that he'd talk to. That's it. And it happened every class, every place, every year. And it can be devastating. I had to really think about, when do I put him in? Because he could break a class or make a class, you know. And you had to select a certain, I might sneeze here. Excuse me.
Gesundheit.
Dankeschön. And you'd have to select a certain class that could handle this, because if you had too many skeptics or low esteemed people, they'd just give up on animal communication with Merlin around. But those that could see the humor in it, because his whole thing was, I don't need to speak to students. I've got Anna. I can just tell her.
Yeah.
It's this thing of, I don't need this and I don't need to teach them. And he never did change. But the power of the class was, wow, he chose the host. He always chose the host or hostess or the person I was closest to. It was as though he could pinpoint it and go, she's the most important. I'll talk to her and no one else. It was incredible. And he continues to do that today.
That is amazing. I feel very honored.
And there was my closing speech to go.
That was, I didn't even think about that, you know, he could decide not to say anything, because when I connected to him, it just went, you know, it really flowed. So that was very nice. But you have another dog.
Yes.
And so Merlin came through first, and he wanted to talk about unconditional love. And so Ollie, your second dog, then I kind of, you know, asked him whether he wanted to share on the same subject and on love. And this is what Ollie said. So Ollie said, hold on. Ollie said, my love was always a little different than Merlin's. I could not understand why he took that confidence from that life is full of wonders and miracles. His love was always flowing so freely, and sometimes I was a bit jealous. My love did not flow like a river. My love was an old train rattling over a mountain pass. Sometimes it was hard. No, sometimes it was there, and sometimes I didn't know where that precious love had gone. But I didn't love you less, just differently. But through you, I found my well of love, and it started flowing like a little creek. We all exhibit love in a different way. Not one way is more precious than another. And sometimes you can't even see the love, and yet it is still there, waiting to open hearts and barriers. When you're here on earth, love as much as you can. Don't hold back and don't compare your love to another soul's love. Your love is true the way it is. I'm sending you all a ray of sunshine from here. which is filled with my unique love frequency to fill your hearts and heal your sorrows.
Beautifully phrased. It's beautifully phrased. You channeled it beautifully.
Thank you.
Yeah. I like all of the ways and the styles that you've put it together, you know, or it came to you. So that was beautiful. Yeah, Oliver, that's very much Oliver. Absolutely.
Good.
And I don't recall exactly all the things I said in our time together, Miriam. Oliver had 5 homes by the time he came to us at 1. And so we thought he was undamaged. He was just a bundle of joy. Like you said, pretty much a river actually overflowing at that time. And you couldn't see where it would go. But in time, you notice idiosyncrasies where there had been challenges, that his past came forward, that he struggled to be seen. And so this bundle of joy, because he's a border collie, cross Australian Shepherd, bundle of joy, would be in your face. He'd give you French kisses. So if you were smiling because he's up there, you'd find his tongue in your mouth, you know, and he would bounce up and down to be seen, and he'd put his head in between your legs to be seen and to be felt. And so all of that love was not always unconditional, because it was more of, let me be seen, or am I being seen? And he always was. And it was very different. It was very different because Merlin was so sure of himself and Oliver not sure. And Merlin a warrior and Oliver an innocent soul. So not comparable. And we never did compare. We would have talked about it to go, oh, this is one and this is the other, but not comparable. And loving him unconditionally. And he never believed that. And I know I talked about that. I never really believed it, because often the foster kids or adopted kids can push buttons to see, well, what if I do this, or will you love me then? And he had a little bit of that going on for himself. But ultimately, the greatest joy was when he realized, they love me unconditionally. They really do. Warts and all, problems and all, he was family. But if you could imagine somebody that tried so hard, would be on the deck, he loved watching the stars. He'd protect the house from close by. His love of food would make you smile. You know, his independence would bring great joy. And put it all together, they were a great complement for each other. Great complement. What one couldn't do, the other could do. If one wasn't cuddly, the other was. And great moments with my son. And Joseph was born when I was 42. And Oliver really was good. And people were concerned as to how he'd be, because he can be a bit edgy. And there's certain things you couldn't do. You couldn't put 2 hands on him. He'd growl. And after 8 p.m., you couldn't touch him. He'd go to bed and he'd growl. So he had these little things, and people were worried as to how would Oliver handle a baby in the house. Miraculously so. And Joseph respected him to say, don't chase him. Don't touch him with 2 hands. Joseph did great. And with it, there was all this unconditional love of, Ollie was here first before our son, and we'll make the family work. Just the same as if you have 2 children. You don't go, oh, the first child has to go because the second one doesn't get on with the first one. It was a matter of, how do we bring this together as a unit? So it's hard to describe. You described his love beautifully well, of really bubbling over, and a river that was trying to find its way, found its way. And people would gravitate towards him, because he would be that greeter and the bundle of joy. And he'd be the one where maybe another person felt like they didn't belong, or they felt like a black sheep in the family. Oliver would show that strength, you know. So I hope that helps. And I'm going to bend forward, because once again, I want to show him and not show him off, because he is so important. And just this picture I showed.
Beautiful.
But there, I'm going to hone in on him and his essence. I think even in the picture, there's a feeling of the innocence and yet the strength and the loyalty. There's another great word for him, exceedingly loyal. And gratitude would be another word that reflects him, because he was always feeling that gratitude for Vin. Vin opened the doors, my husband, and he came in for Vin. And here's just a funny story too. When we had Merlin didn't accept just any dog. And he's always top dog. And he would come at dogs to say, I'm top dog. He had to let people know who he was. And so we found out that this puppy needed a house and a home. And I had said at the coffee shop, don't shoot him, because that's what had happened. I went in for coffee every day, and Jessica turned around and said, we have a dog similar to Merlin we've been given, came off a ranch. The rancher said he's going to be shot in the morning because he doesn't mind. And I said, do not shoot the dog, we will find him a home. And then I had to leave somewhere traveling, and I came back in the coffee shop and she said, we've still got this dog. And I went, oh my goodness, okay, well, give me to the weekend. I can't just bring a dog home and say, hey Vin, here's another dog, and here's this, and do this, do that while I'm gone. And I thought to myself, and I said to Vin, Oliver needs to, at that time he was called Jake, but he didn't like his name Jake. He needs to know that he's yours. Well, we opened this door, Miriam, when we visited the house at Jessica's, and Oliver came shooting through and jumped into Vin's arms. And it was the best thing he could have done. And when we brought him home, Merlin accepted him. And that's when we knew Oliver's meant to be with us, because Merlin said, he's my brother.
Nice. Yeah,
so lots and lots of Merlin and Oliver stories, but you captured it beautifully, the essence of both of their characters here, their personalities here, and also their souls contracts here, because the souls contracts were so very, very different for each one of them.
And you know what, I liked what Ollie said about don't compare yourself, don't compare your love to another person's love. And you know, there's so many different ways to exhibit your love, and animals do that like we do that as well, you know, as humans. And sometimes we compare, you know, to somebody else who's like this radiant sunshine, and your love might not show as much. And I love that Ollie came through and said, don't compare yourself. This is fine. Your love is unique. You are unique.
Right. I want to add to that, and I'll tell you why that's also important, because he didn't think that till he was 12. So that became his soul's contract. His soul's contract was to overcome abandonment and to find the unique self. And we have a gorgeous quote that we created. We create quote cards, and it's actually of my son with one of our horses, and it says, the most important days of your lives, the days that you're born and the day you find out why. Nice. And it's incredible for me. Nice. And so Oliver struggled with that very thing you channeled until he was 12. And then he lived till he was 14 and a half. And for 2.5 years, he realized unconditional love, and that it was okay to be you.
That is so nice.
So it's huge. So also people sometimes think, oh, the animals have got it down, they're just teaching us this. No, neither one of my dogs had it down. Merlin struggled to be apart and had to figure out that even when we're apart, our love is okay. It became his soul's contract. And so on the other side, he'd have to figure out, he never wanted to leave. I didn't want him to leave. Neither one of us, as spiritual as we are and as evolved as we are, people have often said to me, you know, Anna, if you were more evolved, you'd just let your dog go. And I'm thinking, no, you know, I know he's in the afterlife with me, but no, we're here together and we love being together. And even if we meet up again, the now is important to us. So I didn't take that as the truth. It could be their truth. It wasn't my truth. I could be wrong. Interview me in 20 years. Maybe I'll go, I didn't know anything. And the same with Oliver. He had to figure the same lesson out. What is unconditional love? What is loving yourself? What is being exceptional and different? So they weren't just born with this. And that, I think, is important for people to realize, that the animals aren't just simply perfect and know how it is. No, they had to figure that very message out that you delivered.
Do you feel that those two dogs have helped you with your own journey in recognizing your own unconditional love and your own sort of lovability?
I think it's ongoing. It would be it'd be too easy to say, because I could probably list 100 things that Merlin's taught me, with all of it, of opening my heart up again. Absolutely. Yeah. When I met him, I hadn't cried. I didn't start crying till about 2005. And so for years I didn't cry, and it was survival. And so I could tell you all these stories, but ultimately he opened the heart. He gave unconditional love that I don't think I had ever experienced, really. So we could go on about all these lessons, and yet for them to become part of me would take longer than what he and I had together. So it wasn't a simple matter of, oh, I've learned that, now let me take that everywhere in my life. That takes me a little bit longer to transfer it. And the same with Oliver. I've always been different. I shared that with Ollie. I could tell him, look at me, you know, I wasn't always accepted. I've struggled to be loved in certain arenas and scenarios. So I could share it more with him. And I felt that in my sense, a lot of that was supporting him and letting him feel comfortable, and doing that willingly and unconditionally. So absolutely, the lessons are plentyfold, and a lot of it's about remembering to integrate them into our lives in multiple scenarios. That's what we forget, or I forget. And I find all my clients, they have these incredible experiences on an animal communication weekend, or even years with me, and then you go, but we didn't adopt it there, or we didn't adopt it there. And that becomes the harder part, is to let it become us. Breathe it and be it is harder.
I completely agree. This is like something that I often think about as well. And I was actually thinking about it while you were talking. What can we do to integrate those messages? You know, what can we do in our own life? And as you said, to breathe this, you know, where do we resonate? And, you know, do we have unconditional love in our lives? Or, you know, how do we see unconditional love? Do we love unconditionally? Or, you know, do we have a condition on that? So,
and these are questions everybody can ask themselves for their animals. And in animal communication, you see it all the time. I've just done 2 sessions with horses, and one was long distance, and it was, how can I make my horse jump higher? So conditionally. And then I did a house visit, and the horse competing for a young girl, and it was the mother turns around and says, you need to tell him this is his job. His job is to jump. He needs to stop refusing. And I said, well, you know what the difference between the difference between you and him, because she said, I don't always have to, I have to do my job. And I said, yeah, but you chose your job. He didn't choose to be imported, and he didn't choose to do this. So there's a slight difference there. And that's exactly it. Where are we conditional? And it's nice to check in with that, of accepting individuals and working it through, instead of this just needs to be fixed. You need to tell him to jump because I need it fixed, and otherwise I can't sell him. Do you realize what you've just said? I've got to tell him to jump so he loses another home. That just doesn't quite feel right. So yes, it's always important to check in.
How do you integrate the messages, you know, that you pick up from animals into your own life? You know, you were saying about breathing. Is that something that you do, that you breathe with the message, or what you do?
It was interesting. One, for the last, I think, 5 years, I've really focused on every animal communication session I've done, and I've made a message from the animal from that. It's actually waiting to be published, funnily enough, and it was from a number of animal communication consults, channeled information or dialogue information. And that allowed me to highlight it, to go, okay, look, that's the underlying message in this whole session. and that focus for a moment. But another thing that breathe is really important in all my horsemanship and all my animal communication is to step back out and go, okay, let's not get onto this bandwagon, this carousel of what we call life. But before we make a decision, let's stop and breathe and feel it. And it allows us all to check in to know that, yeah, we manifest certain things. Yes, we create certain things. We respond to life a certain way. We need to be mindful of all of that, but also pause for the universe. You know, when are we pushing forward and when are we going up the wrong path? When are we creating chaos? When are we creating calmness? What are we supposed to be doing? And what are we patterning? These are all things that we can do and stop and breathe and go, pause just a minute. Maybe it's meant to be this way, or pause, maybe I'm creating this. And so that pause in between makes a huge difference in all of our lives.
Yeah, that sounds really nice and doable. And it's
exactly, that's beautifully put.
Yeah. So how can people find you and your classes? You're still teaching, so to learn that skill?
Yeah, I didn't even think of that today, Miriam. I was all ready to listen to you. So reach out to horses.com, although that doesn't sound animal communication-ish. We have 3 areas, and the area would be the natural horsemanship, and then the healing and animal communication and coaching. And so reach out to horses is still our primary website with all of the home study kits and DVDs and stuff like that. And we create the calendar and usually publish it about October for the following year. And we're always looking forward to, actually, I'm always looking forward to going on the road and taking the animal communication to people. And if they can't do it, I feel like we've covered our base to say we have a DVD, or we have the home study, or we have the mentorship, or come to us, or I come to you, and we can look at the calendar as to where I am in the world, you know, which is really neat. In YouTube, I shouldn't forget that. We published some beautiful YouTube videos, and they've become more and more viewed. And we've got a great one with a skunk, funnily enough, Jungle Skunk, and she's in Costa Rica. And it's got thousands of views, and so people can watch it. And I'm not frightened to put on a live consult and say, this is me and this is my style, and I put my fingers to my ears, and it's not the rock star style of she dresses up, as you can see. It's not the rock star style of tons of makeup and making the dramatic piece. It really is very down to earth of, I have to put my fingers to my ears and shut my eyes. I have to pause and breathe to be able to do this with great integrity. We always come back to integrity. I don't want to just have a word or a picture and then put my perceptions to it. It has to be genuine. It has to be authentic. And to do that, I really do focus and give 100% of myself. So I find, like, if I'm like this, I would be listening. I was just listening to my alpacas out there making noises, and you get distracted, and that's not fair for the animal. So for me, when I do this gesture, I can give them 100%, and it means that I'm saying, you're important to me, and your message is important to me, and I'm going to make sure I create a quiet environment so that I'm very accurate with my delivery. And so all of that comes through in the YouTubes and also the free webinars and stuff like that.
That is wonderful. I will check out the skunk. I think that's really
Jungle
interesting. One last tip from the expert. You know, what could animal lovers or animal owners, or, you know, people living with animals, what do you think is the first step into, you know, animal communication? When somebody says, I want to learn this, what would you say to them? Where should they start?
I believe they should start with their belief systems, which would be to be so honest with themselves when they say, I'm open. Because open can mean that you're limited. Of, I'm open only this far due to my religion, or I'm open because I don't believe in afterlife. You know, can we shift that we're really open? Believe the impossible is possible. That would be the piece of truly believe you can do it. Believe that the animals aren't missing anything. Believe you can speak your native tongue, i.e. German, to the animals, and you can speak German to the Chinese animals, because it's a language of love and it gets transmitted through pictures. So it's about believing and not saying, well, I believe you can do it, but I can't. Or I believe it's not in pictures, or this. You've got to start believing that the impossible is possible, and drop every belief system you have to be completely open. And then you can have your mind blown. You know, get ready to have your mind blown, because animal communication changes the way you see the world. And it changes everything you've been brought up to understand and believe. Everything changes. And the truth comes through, the truth. You're not hearing it from a third party or a teacher, a parent, a peer. You're hearing it genuine, unconditionally genuine. They've got nothing to hide, nothing to prove. They're just going to tell you the truth as to why you're here on this planet, and what we are here to learn, and how we can be. And every living being can connect and communicate. And that's huge. It changes everything, because it's very easy for people to compartmentalize and go, okay, you know what? I can talk to my dog, but the insects don't count. Interesting. So we kill the ants, and we kill the moths, and we kill everything that's inconvenience to us because it's nature, but we talk to our dog. And that needs to change, to realize, have a conscious decision, stop and breathe, realize things with a heartbeat are communicating too. Get to know them, get to understand them. So it comes back to belief, Miriam. There's your boy, he's saying, session's over. Time's up. He's quite right.
Thank you so much. And that was lovely again. And thank you for your time. Thank you for your tips. And I hope to see you on the road. So
it will be lovely. I look forward to it. It'd be great.
I think so too.
You'll fit right into our tribe.
Yeah. Have a lovely day, and hopefully I'll see you soon.
Thank you, Miriam. Take care.
Bye.